For 4 years, Jasmine and I had what I thought was a strong marriage. We weren't perfect, no couple is, but I loved her with everything I had. She was my world, and I believed we were building a future together. I met Jasmine when I was in my early 30s, already deep into my career. She was vibrant, full of life, and had this effortless charm that could make anyone feel special. At the time, I was a man completely devoted to my work, focused on growing my company, and never thought much about relationships. But Jasmine changed that. She made me want more than just success. She made me want a life filled with love. We got married 2 years after we met. At first, everything was perfect. Late night conversations, spontaneous weekend trips, and shared dreams about the future. She wanted a beautiful home, exciting vacations, and a life filled with luxury. I promised her I would give her all of it, and I did. I worked hard, long hours, sacrificing time with friends, pushing myself beyond exhaustion to provide for her. I built my company from the ground up, Sterling Enterprises, a name that held weight in the business world. The long nights, the endless meetings, the stress, it was all for us, or so I thought. Jasmine loved the lifestyle. Expensive dinners, designer clothes, luxury spa days, I gave her everything she wanted. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. At first, it was subtle. The way she'd sigh when I talked about work. The way she started spending more time with her friends at high-end lounges while I was buried in board meetings. She complained that I was too busy, that I wasn't fun anymore. I tried to make it up to her. I planned surprise trips, took her to exclusive restaurants, bought her the things she loved. But it was never enough. Then I started noticing real changes. She was on her phone more, always texting, smiling at messages she never shared with me. She started coming home late, claiming she was with friends, but avoiding my gaze when I asked for details. I wanted to believe it was just a phase, that maybe we had hit a rough patch. But deep down, a part of me knew I was losing her, and I was right. One evening, I came home early from work, excited to surprise her with dinner. But Jasmine wasn't alone. She was on the phone, pacing the living room, her voice soft and teasing. "I can't wait to see you." "No, he has no idea." I froze in the doorway, my heart pounding in my chest. "I'll tell him soon." "He won't take it well, but it doesn't matter anymore." She turned then, finally noticing me. Her face went pale, but she recovered quickly, hanging up with a casual, "I'll call you later." For the first time in years, I saw the distance between us wasn't just emotional, it was real. There was someone else. I didn't want to believe it, but the truth was staring me in the face, and a week later, she confirmed it. "Mark, I'm leaving," she said, avoiding my eyes. "This isn't working anymore. I need more. I need excitement. I don't want to be with someone who's always working and never present." I wanted to argue, to remind her that everything I did was for us, but I saw it in her expression. She had already moved on. She wasn't just leaving me. She was leaving me for him. And the worst part? She thought she was making the better choice. But she had no idea who she was running to, because the man she left me for worked for me. And soon, she'd realized just how big of a mistake she had made. The night Jasmine left, she didn't even cry. She stood at the doorway, suitcase in hand, her eyes empty of any emotion. "I've already made up my mind, Mark. There's no point in dragging this out," she said. I stared at her, trying to find the woman I had fallen in love with, the woman I had built a life with for 4 years. But she wasn't there. Instead, I saw someone cold, distant, and selfish. "You're leaving me for him, aren't you?" My voice was steady, but my hands clenched into fists. She hesitated for a second, then lifted her chin. Yes, there it was, the truth. No remorse. No guilt. Just a plain, matter-of-fact answer, like it wasn't destroying me. "Who is he, Jasmine?" I asked, even though I already knew. Her lips curled slightly, almost as if she was amused by my question. "His name is Ryan." Ryan, I knew that name because Ryan was a junior executive at Sterling Enterprises, a kid in his late 20s, Fresh-faced, ambitious, and desperate to prove himself. I had hired him personally, mentored him, and now he was standing in my home, taking everything I had built. He's not like you, Mark. He's exciting. He makes me feel alive. She let out a soft sigh, like she was explaining a simple fact, rather than ripping my heart out. I deserve passion, and Ryan gives me that. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to remain calm. So that's it. You're throwing away everything we built for a fling? It's not a fling, she said, rolling her eyes. We're in love. I've never felt this way before. Her words felt like a slap. Never. So what had the last 4 years been? A mistake? A joke? Jasmine exhaled, irritated that I wasn't just letting her walk away easily. Look, Mark, I know this is hard for you, but we both know this marriage hasn't been working. You're always working, always focused on a company. I don't want to be second to your job anymore, I scoffed. So instead, you decided to sleep with one of my employees? She didn't even flinch. Don't make this ugly, Mark. I didn't plan for this to happen, but it did. And now I'm choosing happiness. She turned and walked out, leaving me standing in the doorway, watching her disappear. Into the night, I didn't chase her, I didn't beg. I just stood there, burning her last words into my mind. I'm choosing happiness. But what she didn't realize was that she had made the worst choice of her life. For days, I felt hollow. I went to work, attended meetings, and kept up appearances, but inside I was boiling. I had built everything from the ground up, and Ryan, the man I had given a chance, had not only betrayed me professionally, he had stolen my wife. I should have fired him on the spot. I had every right to, but something held me back. I wanted him to feel secure. I wanted him to think he had won. And Jasmine? She needed to learn that excitement and charm didn't build a future. She needed to realize that she had walked out on a man who held all the power dots, so I stayed silent. I played the role of the heartbroken husband, pretending to move on while I watched everything unfold from the shadows. It didn't take long for the cracks to show. Jasmine and Ryan went public with their relationship almost immediately. Fancy dates, expensive trips, social media posts flaunting their so-called love. But Ryan wasn't me. He didn't have my power, my discipline, or my ability to navigate the business world. He was young, reckless, and driven by ego. He thought he had won, but he had no idea what was coming. One night, I ran into them at an upscale restaurant. Jasmine looked radiant until she saw me. Her smile faltered for a split second before she masked it with indifference. Ryan, on the other hand, looked nervous. I walked past them, acting as if they were nothing more than a minor inconvenience in my life. But just as I passed, I heard Jasmine whisper to Ryan, "See? He doesn't even care." She wanted me to react. She wanted me to be angry, to show that I was still affected. But I wouldn't give her that satisfaction. Instead, I simply smirked and left. Because what Jasmine didn't know was that her perfect new life was about to crumble. And when it did, I would be there watching her realize exactly what she had thrown away. The days after Jasmine left felt like a slow, suffocating nightmare. The house was quieter, emptier. Her perfume still lingered in the bedroom, the closet half full with the clothes she hadn't bothered to take. It was like she had walked out of my life and left only ghosts behind. I told myself I wouldn't break. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of knowing how much she had wounded me. But late at night, when the world was silent, I couldn't stop my thoughts from spiraling. How long had she been planning this? How many nights had she laid next to me, pretending? Was I really that blind? The betrayal burned, not just because she had left, but because she had chosen him. Ryan, someone I had trusted, someone who worked beneath me. It wasn't just personal, it was a direct attack on my pride, my authority, my very identity as a man. And yet, the worst part was knowing that I had loved her more than she ever deserved. For the first time in years, I struggled to focus at work. My office felt smaller, suffocating, with whispers of gossip lurking in the hallways. People knew. They had seen Jasmine and Ryan together. The way she clung to him like a trophy. I caught my assistant exchanging glances with another employee. When I walked in one morning, their expressions shifted from curiosity to pity. That pissed me off. I didn't need their sympathy. I buried myself in work, trying to convince myself that this was just another setback, one that I would overcome like everything else. But the anger inside me simmered, threatening to explode at any moment. I refused to let that happen. Not yet, because revenge was best served cold. I could feel the shift in Jasmine before she even realized it herself. At first, she and Ryan were parading around like they had won some grand prize. Fancy dinners, vacations, a perfect little honeymoon phase, but reality always catches up. Ryan was not me. He didn't have my power, my control, or my resources. And Jasmine had grown used to a life of luxury, one that I had given her. One afternoon, I ran into an old friend, Daniel, at a private business club. He hesitated before bringing it up, but curiosity got the best of him. So, Jasmine and Ryan. Huh, he said, swirling his whiskey. I leaned back in my chair, expression unreadable. What about them? Daniel smirked. She doesn't seem as happy as she pretends to be. A friend of mine saw them at a bar last week. She looked distracted, unsettled. I said nothing, but inside I felt a dark satisfaction brewing. The excitement was fading. Jasmine had left stability for passion, security for thrill. But what happens when the thrill wears off? I already knew the answer. She would look back and realize she had thrown away a man who had given her everything. But by the time she realized it, it would be far too late. A month after Jasmine left, I started hearing whispers, rumors floating. Through my office, snatches of conversation in business circles. Ryan was struggling. At first, he carried himself with arrogance, as if he had truly won. He walked through the office with newfound confidence, acting like he was untouchable. But confidence without competence is a dangerous thing. I had been patient, watching from the shadows as he made mistake after mistake. Deadlines missed, clients unimpressed, deals slipping through his fingers. And Jasmine? She was beginning to see the difference between a man and a boy. One evening, I stopped by a high-end restaurant for a late dinner with some business associates. Just as I was settling into my seat, a familiar voice cut through the noise. Ryan, stop being so damn childish. I turned my head slightly. There she was, Jasmine, sitting across from Ryan at a corner table, her arms crossed, frustration evident on her face. Ryan leaned back in his chair, his expression smug but defensive. Oh, so now I'm the problem? Funny. How you didn't think that when you left Mark? Jasmine's jaw tightened. This isn't about Mark. This is about you not taking anything seriously. You were supposed to handle that account, Ryan, and now you're acting like it's no big deal. My lips curled slightly. So she finally sees it. Jasmine had left stability for excitement. But excitement doesn't pay for luxury. It doesn't build a future. It doesn't give her the security she had once taken for granted. Ryan was a distraction, not a provider. And now reality was setting in. I watched for a moment longer, savoring the tension between them. Jasmine was beginning to unravel, her perfect illusion cracking piece by piece. And the best part? I hadn't even done anything yet. The next morning, I called an executive meeting. Ryan walked in late, looking exhausted, probably from the argument with Jasmine. His arrogance was slipping. He knew he was underperforming, and it was only a matter of time before he faced the consequences. I sat at the head of the table, watching as he fumbled through his presentation. The numbers were off, the projections were weak. Clients weren't renewing contracts under his watch. Finally, I spoke. Ryan, do you know what happens when someone underdelivers in my company? He shifted uncomfortably. I just need a little more time. I cut him off, leaning forward. I don't run a charity, Ryan. I run a business. And you, my friend, are costing me money. His face paled. The room was silent. Everyone was waiting to see what I would do. I didn't fire him, not yet. I wanted him to sweat. I wanted him to feel the walls closing in, knowing that his failure wasn't just his problem anymore, it was Jasmine's too. Because without his job, what did he have to offer her? Absolutely nothing. A week later, my secretary knocked on my office door. Mr. Sterling, there's someone here to see you. I glanced up from my paperwork. I don't have any scheduled meetings. It's Jasmine. I froze. For a brief second, emotions, I thought. I had buried resurfaced. Anger, betrayal, bitterness, but then I smirked right on time. Send her in. The door opened, and there she was, Jasmine. She looked different, not as confident, not as radiant. There was uncertainty in her eyes, something I never thought I'd see. She stepped forward, hesitating. Mark, can we talk? I leaned back in my chair, staring at the woman who had once been my everything. Now you want to talk? She swallowed hard. I made a mistake. I already knew that. But what Jasmine didn't know was that her mistake had cost her more than just me. And I wasn't about to let her forget it. Jasmine stood in front of my desk, shifting uncomfortably. The confident, carefree woman who had walked out of my life 4 months ago was gone. In her place was someone uncertain, hesitant. I folded my hands, tilting my head slightly. You made a mistake? My voice was calm, controlled. She nodded. Biting her lip, She let out a sigh as if gathering her thoughts. I thought I wanted something different. I thought Ryan and I had something real. But I raised an eyebrow. But she hesitated before whispering, he's not you. There it was. The moment I had been waiting for, the realization that had finally hit her. I could have laughed. I could have thrown her words back in her face. But instead I stayed silent, letting the weight of her confession hang between us. She expected me to welcome her back. She thought I was still the same man she had left behind. She was so wrong. She stepped closer, her eyes searching mine. Mark, I was stupid. I let the excitement cloud my judgment. Ryan isn't the man I thought he was. He's irresponsible, reckless, and he's losing his job, isn't he? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She let out a humorless laugh, shaking her head. God, I was so blind. I thought he could give me what I was missing, but all he did was take. I finally spoke. And what is it you think you were missing, Jasmine? She swallowed hard. You. Stability. A future. Her voice cracked slightly, as if the weight of her choices had finally sunk in. I messed up, Mark, but I'm here now and I'm ready to fix this. To fix us? She reached for my hand, but I didn't move. Instead, I let out a low chuckle, shaking my head. You think this is fixable? Her face fell. Mark, please. I still love you. I stood up slowly, walking around my desk until I was standing directly in front of her. She looked up at me, hope flickering in her eyes. I leaned in slightly, just enough for her to feel the heat of my presence. You don't love me, Jasmine. You love what I can give you. And you only came back because you finally realized Ryan can never be me. She flinched at my words. That's not true. It is. I cut her off. If Ryan was still thriving, if he was still making you feel alive, would you be here? Or would you still be clinging to the illusion that he was better than me? She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Silence. Because she knew the answer. And so did I. I took a step back, watching her unravel. You made your choice, Jasmine. My voice was calm, cold. And now you have to live with it. Her breathing became shallow. Mark, you don't mean that. I do. I walked back to my chair, sitting down and looking at her with an air of finality. I moved on, Jasmine. I'm not the man you walked out on. And I have no intention of taking back someone who threw me away so easily. Her eyes welled up. I was stupid. I didn't know what I was losing. And now you do. I interrupted. But it's too late. She shook her head frantically. Please. Mark, I don't have anyone else. I need you. I leaned forward slightly. No, Jasmine, you need what I can give you. And I have no interest in giving you anything anymore. Her breath hitched. For the first time, true panic flashed across her face. Mark, please, goodbye, Jasmine. She stared at me as if trying to process that I was really letting her go. That I wasn't going to be the safety net she had always relied on. And then, just like that night, she left. She walked away. Only this time, she wasn't walking towards something better. She was walking into nothing, and I couldn't have cared less. Jasmine walked out of my office for the last time. But unlike before, she didn't carry herself with arrogance. There was no confidence, no defiance, just defeat. She had expected me to take her back. She had convinced herself that I would still be waiting, willing to forgive, willing to clean up the mess she had made of her life. But that's where she was wrong. Because I had already moved on. The moment she chose Ryan over me, she had sealed her fate. And now? She had no one left. The day after Jasmine came crawling back, I finalized the decision I had been holding off on for weeks. Ryan was done. I called him into my office, watching as he walked in, his usual cocky attitude replaced with thinly veiled panic. He knew. He had seen the way the company was turning against him, the way clients no longer trusted him, the way his performance was being scrutinized, but he still tried to play it cool. Mark, I know things haven't been great, but if you give me a little more time, I held up a hand, silencing him. Ryan, let's skip the excuses. We both know why you're here. He swallowed hard, shifting in his seat. Look, man, I made some mistakes, but I can fix this. I can. You can pack up your office. My voice was sharp, final. His eyes widened. You're firing me? I leaned forward. I'm cutting out dead weight. And right now, that's you. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He had no argument, no defense, because he knew he had brought this on himself. He had stolen my wife, disrespected me, and thought he could climb higher by stepping on me. But the thing about standing on another man's shoulders, when he moves, you fall. And Ryan had just hit the ground dash hard. 2 weeks after I fired Ryan, I ran into Daniel again. He smirked as he slid into the seat across from me at the private club. You're going to love this, he said, taking a sip of his drink. Guess who's been making calls, looking for a job? I didn't even have to guess. Ryan, Daniel chuckled. And guess what else? Jasmine's no longer attached to his hip. Word is she left him the second things went south. I shouldn't have been surprised. Jasmine had never been loyal to a person. She'd been loyal to a lifestyle. And when Ryan couldn't provide the luxury she was used to, she discarded him. Just like she had discarded me. The difference? I thrived without her. Ryan? He was nothing. A few nights later, I was walking out of a restaurant when I heard a familiar voice behind me. Mark? I turned. Jasmine stood there. Her eyes filled with something I'd never seen before. True regret. She looked different, tired, worn out. The glow she once had was gone, replaced with the dullness that came from realizing she had made the biggest mistake of her life. Can we talk? She asked softly. I studied her for a moment, then nodded. Not because I cared, but because I wanted her to say out loud what I already knew. We sat at a quiet table, the weight of everything unsaid settling between us. I'm not here to beg, she started, looking down at her hands. I know I don't deserve anything from you. I said nothing. I wanted you to know that I understand now, she continued. I thought I needed excitement. I thought I needed something new, but I was wrong. She lifted her eyes to meet mine. You were the best thing that ever happened to me, Mark, and I threw it away. For the first time since she left, I saw the truth. In her eyes, she finally understood, but it didn't change anything. I took a slow sip of my drink, then set the glass down. You know what the funny part is, Jasmine? She swallowed hard. What? Even if you had never left me, we still wouldn't have lasted. Because eventually, I would have seen you for who you really are. her breath caught, pain flashing across her face. I stood up, tossing some cash on the table. "Take care of yourself, Jasmine." And just like that, I walked away. She had walked out on me once, no? I was walking out on her for good.